Hey, welcome to Jason FinTips. I'm Jason, and I'll be your host today. I wanted to talk about retirement planning in your 20s and 30s, but quick things before we get going here. We need to get a little disclosure out of the way. This content shared during this video is provided for general education, entertainment, and informational purposes only. It is not financial, legal, tax, investment, insurance, political, or medical advice. No personal recommendations are being made, and nothing presented should be interpreted as a solicitation, endorsement, or guarantee of results. Although I do hold the CFP, CLU, and CHLU designations, I am not acting as a financial advisor, fiduciary, tax professional, or legal representative through this platform. All examples, case studies, and scenarios are hypothetical and for illustrative purposes only. Viewing or engaging in this video does not create an advisor client or fiduciary client, fiduciary advisor, or finance planner client relationship. Always consult your own licensed professional for advice specific to your individual needs. You can find more at jasonfintips.com/legal. Thank you very much. So let's get started today. I wanted to talk about retirement planning in your 20s and 30s. I hear everyone say, oh, you need to get started early, but how do you actually get started for retirement planning? And kind of how do we start building some wealth? Excuse me there. Well, one of the big things is starting early actually helps through the compound interest, and it starts getting you into the position of savings. Even though there is actually a thing where a lot of the savings can actually be, the majority of savings actually happens before retirement, for the 20s and 30s, start setting the groundwork for the foundation of everything that can come later. So starting in 2030 gives you a powerful advantage. First of all, it gives you time, gives you a lot of decades of time in compounding, which is going to be the slow growth over the years. And it can give you time to make contributions and substantial nest egg and plan for what you're going to have. So early retirement planning matters. The strategies used today can help you avoid common mistakes in the future. Understanding retirement in today's world. Retirement is not what it used to be. Your grandparents may have relied on pensions, social securities. They may have had 401ks, but today most workers are now responsible for their own retirements. And so we went from a defined benefit where you were the benefit that you were going to get in retirement was defined off of like a pension plan to a defined savings. How much savings are you going to defined contribution? The company's going to make a contribution on your account, or you have to make a contribution to your retirement account, and then you get to make and decide how you turn that into an income stream later in life. But what we've seen happen is we've seen rising healthcare costs, we've seen rising housing costs, we've seen long-term care expenses. We've also seen the cost of investing go up for the price of the stock market, especially after this recent last year and about the end of 2025. It's gotten very expensive. So changing timelines, relying on working to 65 is risky. I know a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to work to 65. They recently moved the ability to withdraw, I think, up to 73, or they're moving up to some of for retirement to make distributions. The problem is a lot of people, a majority of workers, their bodies no longer allow them. So it's not that they want to retire, it's they're forced physically for some reason to have to retire. It may be layoffs, it may be a company downsizing, it may be health effects. So waiting until 65 is someone that says, okay, I'm going to work to 65, or I'm going to work till 70 or the rest of my life. Some people say I love work. That may or may not be something that you can do based off of your health or other reasons that are outside of your own individual control. So one of the things, if you're going to start putting a nest egg away, is the power of starting early. Here we have an example of a chart. Starting at age 25, saving $200 a month for 40 years, puts us with about ending savings at about a 7% rate of return, about $479,000. If you start at 35, it's going to have about $244,000, and 45, you're going to have about 103 average. So it really is that ability to start earning, to get the compound interest going, and to start having an account that you plan for being in retirement long term. Let's do this account just a little bit there. Okay. So the first dollar you save in your 20s will work harder for you because it's going to have more time to work than the $100 you save in your 40s. So start retirement goals in your 20s and 30s. And now, so what this means is start doing some life planning goals. And I think this goes back to some authentic goal planning and life planning, making sure that you say, hey, do I want to retire by 60? And then how do I work that back? I think the biggest thing is a lot of individuals fail to plan in their 20s and 30s that say, I'll just take care of it when I get there, or it's not even thinking about or individuals get into their 40s and 50s and go, hey, maybe it's time to start thinking about retirement. When in fact, maybe if you'd been taking a little bit around over the back of the year and setting up some IRAs, a 401k, or if you're a content creator, setting up your own individual retirement plan and putting a little bit away each month over the years, could have had a large effect 10, 20, 30 years down the line. And some rough numbers are by age 30, you want to have about 1 times your annual salary saved, and by age 40 to have about 3 times your annual average hourly saved in some sort of retirement type account. These are guidelines, they're not rules. They can help you keep track. They're just kind of like, am I on the way and I'm going in the right path? Um, don't let student loans or starting salaries discourage you. Even small contributions today can help them make long-term momentum. Salary multiples by age 30, 1 time 60,000 example. If you had $60,000 salary by age 30, you'd like to have about 60,000 saved. By age 40, 3 times about 180. By age 50, about 360. By age 60, you're looking to have 400 to 600,000, 8 to 10 times your annual salary saved inside a retirement account. This is a one time this is the one time advantage can actually be on your side. You can use it while you got it. Choosing the right retirement accounts. If you are an employee, you typically have a 401k, a 403b, or a TSP if you're a government type employee. They also have the full employer match. It's free money. If you put $1 in, they match you with $1. It's a government incentive that's put out to try to have individuals save money. And if you're in a lower income tax bracket when you're younger, they also do things like savers credits as well that can be a faction. So make sure to check out are there accounts and that you can save? Are there additional benefits when you do your taxes to save for your retirement account? You also have a Roth and a traditional IRA. A traditional IRA, contributions are made and you deduct it from your taxable income today, but it becomes taxable income when you withdraw that money in retirement after age 65 or when you start making the distributions. Um, a Roth IRA, you pay the taxes on it today, but it gets to grow tax free. A lot of this is a question of what the marginal tax rates are going to be, and now and in the future. No one knows. We also know that some people try to go a mix, so it kind of one of those things you have to kind of figure out what your career is, how stable, where you think you're going to be, and where the politics are going to put into the type of how those tax treatments of those accounts happen over the next 20, 30 years, especially if you're younger, starting out. We also have a lot of individuals or younger people are using high deductible healthcare plans with an HSA. Um, it can be an additional source of income. So we have a 401k, a 401(b), a traditional IRA, a Roth IRA, and an HSA. Basically, the big thing is the 401k, you can put about $23,000 a year away, and you're looking at it, it goes previous tax. So you're not going to pay taxes on it when it goes in, but you're going to receive it or it's going to come out as ordinary income when you make the distribution in retirement. It's worked for employers and it's best. The 401ks and the 403bs are best for the employer match. You do not want to leave that on the table. You also have a traditional IRA. This is something you would go open up like a Fidelity, a Schwab, a bank. Open up a traditional IRA account, and then you would put the money in there and you would take a tax deduction and not record it as income in that year, but it would be taxed when you pull it out. A Roth IRA, you would go in and make a contribution into an account, but you would take after tax money and put that into the account, but the growth earnings would be taxed. The growth in earnings are no longer taxable because it's already been taxed. An HSA is an individual. Those are for individuals with health care plans, a little bit more advanced planning in there. I think a lot of people need to understand a lot of the older generation had retirement and pension plans. They have Social Security that's probably paying a little bit more than what most of depending on what happens with voting. In 2033, we're headed to probably go to about 80% of the payout, basically indefinitely on the Social Security fund. So I think planning about 80% of your SSI benefits might be a good start as a floor. The question is whether or not there's the political will. There's a lot of easy ways to fix it. The question is there the political will to bring it back into fully funded? And that's the question that individuals that we're going to have as a society and governments are going to have to come up with. Um, Stocks over bonds. Historically, stocks have had a higher annual return. One of the things we are seeing is that, maybe depending on where you are, stocks right now are historically kind of expensive, and this is in late 2025. However, it could be something that goes on and goes into a higher, that we really don't know what's going to happen in the future, especially looking long term. What are you going to do to be able to hold a store of value long term? So you have stocks and bonds and portfolios. Bonds average about 3 to 4%. A lot of people use in low cost index funds. There's a lot of stuff like target date funds that individuals can say, hey, I'm going to put my safe in an age weighted target date fund and forget about it. And a lot of the low cost index funds, if it's done with a low cost index fund type diversified portfolio on a target date fund, some of those can be really efficient. So the question is, what are you going to try to do to last long term? Do you want to be a set it and forget it? Do you want to be someone that's actively involved? So, but the big thing is, are you putting money away for retirement? Here's just kind of what's called an asset allocation, typically what's called a glide path, and they become less risky as you get retirement. In your 20 to 30s, someone might have an 80 to 90% stock portfolio with 10% bonds. Age 40s, 70 to 80% with bonds, 20 to 30%. Age 50s, 60 to 70 with about 30 to 40% bonds, 60s plus about 40% six. I'm a little bit different. I think a little bit of I think and for diversification with the bonds to work, you need to have at least about 20% of the bonds in a portfolio typically. So if someone was going to do a diversified portfolio and wanted to not just be like 100%, the 90% stocks, if you want to have a more diversification, because the diversification numbers kind of fall apart when it's under about 20%. So I would kind of say if I was going to do a portfolio with me personally, I would probably look at something that was at least 20% bonds with 80%. Otherwise, I might be looking, there's no real reason for the bonds to be there for the different, there's not enough bond in the portfolio to act as a cushion for the diversification for a modern portfolio to work if that's the strategy you're going with. The other thing we see on the other end of the side of the curve is those in their 60s. We see that, someone in their 60s that's going to live to, let's say, 85, 90 or 90s, they're looking at an additional 30 years. A 40% in stocks might be considered a little low, and 40%, 60% bonds might be a little high for the low income because you still have to have income to earn. So I'm more of a sit there and say this is where something you need to figure out your risk tolerance, where you are, and what are your goals. So I tend to think I would tend to lean more towards the 60% in stocks for me individually, and a 40% of the bonds being more of a portfolio, because you still have longevity of 20, 30 years. um, don't wait until you're alone. So that's just kind of an idea, a little bit on asset allocation. Look that up. Of course, that would cause, make sure you have an investment policy statement. Make sure you understand your risk tolerances. A lot of the asset allocations are already done by some of the target date funds, and there's a lot of work that goes on for professionals that kind of figure out glide paths on those. So that's something that you can look at to kind of have it to set it and forget it. There's someone you can get down into the weeds to buying your own individual shares to build your individual portfolios. It really depends on where you are. The big thing is I want you to I think individuals should have an investment policy statement, a philosophy, and something to guide them through when times get really rough or you start having a lot of volatility, but also understanding there's a lot of time, and then understanding to keep making contributions to save for your retirement in a tax deferred type or sheltered account. Um, Balancing debt and retirement savings. A lot of young professionals say, should I pay off my student loan first or my retirement? The answer is possibly both. This is one of those ones where I definitely have some Excel spreadsheets out or financial planning software running through and taking a look at high interest debt, like paying off the credit cards, continued minimum payments, having a debt strategy. Um, Debt versus retirement prioritization. So you might come up with something like a little bit of a goal where you say, okay, well, I have these high interest credit cards at 15 to 25%. This is going to be the most important thing for me to pay off. I'm going to take and do an example. I would make sure I met my company match, and then I would focus on my credit card debt. On my student loans, I might take a look at 3 to 6%, still making sure that I need to pay those, how much I'm going to cost, start making my payments, but I might maybe split this to say I pay my debt down and I also put a little bit in retirement because I never know what's going to happen in the future. Mortgage interest rates, pay the minimum, invest. If I was in a 7% interest rate, I kind of have what's called a hurdle rate in here, and that's something that where you kind of figure out there's a rate in there. You think, I'm going to have a hard time beating this specific rate long term in the market, or I'm going to be able to keep up with inflation. So someone like a mortgage rate, that's a lot of individuals that are like a 3% mortgage rate might say, you know what, that's the cheapest mortgage interest money that I'll ever have. I'm just going to make my minimum payment on my mortgage and put a little bit more money in my retirement account. If someone sits there and said, oh, I have about a 7% mortgage rate, they might say, you know what, maybe I'm going to try to be a little bit more aggressive because I think I would have a hard time on my risk tolerance in my portfolio reaching a 7% rate of return in my portfolio. So it kind of depends on where you are. It's a strategy. Make sure to run the numbers. The question is though to have an investment policy statement, and have a financial plan that meets your goals. Because someone might be very risk averse and say, I really want to have no debt. I really want to have my mortgage paid off, or I really want to pay off my student loan. These are the questions that you need to have that kind of come in and figure out your own individual situation on there's what's mathematically the optimal point, but there's also what's emotionally fits your goals, features your goals, and what someone's individual's goals and life strategy is and what they feel comfortable with. Um, Lifestyle choices boost long-term wealth. Don't I see one thing I've seen over the years is people overextending themselves with buying a more rent or a higher mortgage than what they can, and then all of a sudden they're like after the honeymoon period with a new home and a big mortgage wears out, home mortgage payment keeps coming, property taxes, which is one thing I don't think everyone totally plans for. Property taxes keep raising over the years, and all of a sudden 5-10 years down the line, 5 years down the line, you're not haven't paid that much down, you have a higher interest rate, and you've also got property taxes, and you're getting a real squeeze in your lifestyle, and it starts to become a burden. So one thing that's one of the long-term plans of part of your retire or your personal plan. I do a big fan of making sure that good house purchases can be a great thing to fix your costs, but realize there's other costs, but not overextending yourselves, just like anything else. Transportation, reliable used cars and car payments, well, that can depend on some of that. It just depends on, some people really like to have a car with a nice warranty. It kind of depends on, that's an individual one, and depends on income and where you are financially. Lifestyle inflation, avoid upgrading your lifestyle with every raise, and windfall bonuses, raises, or tax refunds might be a good idea to put a little bit away. Make sure that you have enough of a cushion for an emergency fund and some savings. Common mistakes to avoid: cashing out an old 401k rather than rolling it over into something like the IRA or your current 401k. Making sure to look at your current 401k and the investment options inside of it for cost, fees, and expenses. And if you think you're in a portfolio, a retirement plan that's really expensive, you can tell your employer, you guys have a responsibility to go out and shop these plans around to try to find us a cost efficient retirement plan, because maybe the plan you're expending in is pretty darn expensive, or maybe it doesn't offer one. And you can tell your employer that maybe there's some great options out there to put into a 401k type retirement plan with profit sharings that can actually help get him a lot of the tax incentives for that. Waiting for the right time, timing the market, extremely difficult. I think one of the big things is ignoring inflation. $1, we've seen inflation really run rampant. We've seen a big question is slowly, I think there's a big question between understanding real income and nominal income, inflation adjusted income. And for the last 30 years, we've basically seen nominal income has risen, but real income, the amount of money that you actually can buy with the money that your paycheck, how far it goes, has actually gone down. And this is one of the things I think we're seeing today is people, one of the biggest things to pay to is in your annual renewal. I just did another video on this, is make sure to check out your annual retirement plan when you're doing your financial plan. Am I getting a raise that's just 3%? You need to go over and check the Bureau of Labor Statistics and see what is the actual inflation rate. Am I getting a real income? Is it a real raise, or is it not a real raise? Am I taking a pay bump, or am I taking a pay decrease? Because that 1% per year, if inflation's running at example 4%, but inflation's running at 4%, but you get a 3% raise, you're only taking a 1% pay cut. Now you start doing that over 5-10 years, all of a sudden you're sitting here a decade later and you're making 10%, and you're like, well, my paycheck's larger than it was, but it doesn't go as far. And I think we've seen that, especially for the last 25 years, that has affected a lot of the middle class, and it's slowly eating away at the real how much they can actually buy. So it's like, maybe I don't have as much this year. I used to be able to afford to go on vacation a couple times a year, or take the family on a vacation. Now that money's not there. Like, maybe I used to be able to afford a new car. Well, the car is not that, but I'm not able to keep up. Your paycheck is not able to buy as much as it did historically. And that is when a lot of individuals are focused on nominal raises rather than real income wages. And that's one of the big things I really want to focus on, is individuals should focus on their real income when they look at their wage for your annual bonus. If you're not getting a raise to keep up with inflation, you're essentially taking a pay cut. Tools and resources, there's a lot of retirement calculators. There's a lot of retirement apps out there like Betterment, there's Fidelity, there's a lot of great podcasts out there. Financial literacy goes on compounding. we need more control, but you're going to have to take a lot more control than previous generations. Unlike your grandparents, you can't assume retirement's going to be simple and going to take care of itself. They had stronger safety nets, pensions. They had more affordable housing, and more robust Social Security support. So today's landscape is much different, and young workers face economic headwinds that are going to require proactive planning. And another part of this, I think one of the biggest things is to make sure to get involved in voting, because a lot of the things that have happened in Social Security, minimum wages, these are policy decisions that are made as a government. And I think this is something where individuals need to be active in voting, because it is now part of your financial plan to vote for financial policies that are going to help benefit families. It's like, could we have larger child tax credits? Could we have things that make it less expensive for a child? Could we have child free child lower cost child assisted lower cost child tax credits for child care? These are a lot of things. These are political decisions that I don't think are being fully addressed. We've also seen the decline of pensions. We've seen a lot of market volatility. We've seen inflation, especially after COVID, housing, healthcare costs. We've seen student loans. This is another policy decision. The policies have been made to stop funding the universities to give tax cuts and increase tuition on students. This has been a political decision that has affected your personal finances. That is why voting matters. Uncertainty around Social Security. Social Security, there are a number of solutions to be able to solve Social Security with a problem. It's not a difficult problem to solve. It is a political problem that does not have, the political solutions to that are not very appetizing to a lot of older generations, the wealthier that have the money to pay for that, to bring it back into full solvency. So the implication is here: you must take more control. Not only have to take more control of your retirement, you're going to have to take active contributing to your retirement accounts. Social Security, based on the current trust fund and how the taxes are, the people that pay taxes is going to be able to pay about 80% of the current benefits for the rest of your lifetime. The question is it going to be 100% of the benefits you were that individuals were promised? That, once again, is a political decision that is going, or the growth rate of the economy that goes into that. But mostly that's a political decision. A lot of the overhead for the original overhead for Social Security, if you go read the trust funds report, was from the original overhead. A lot of that was solved back in the 80s under Reagan. We're still paying for some of those issues that happened. No one alive today is really responsible for. But the situation now is, how do they solve the current situation that they deal with in the future? And that is going to be solved by politics, which is why voting matters so much. Staying invested, and resisting panic during downturns. Learn the basics of personal finance. Make sure to set some authentic goals, which I think goes back to set your personal financial plan of where you want to be and what your goals are over your life. Use technology, apps, robo-advisors, calculators. There's a lot of different funding solutions that they can say to, how do I fund how much money I need? And so looking beyond your 40s, looking ahead, let's say you're looking at your 40s to start to retire earlier than your peers, pursue passion projects instead of working out of necessity, and help you weather financial storms. Early planning is not just about money. It's about securing the plan for your freedom in the future. So once again, I wanted to come back to voting should be part of your plan. It's going to affect your Social Security, your Medicare, your health insurance, child care, how much it costs out of pocket for childbirth, how the health insurance is funded, retirement accounts, the tax rules that are changed for the 401ks, IRA, HSAs. They are all written and handled by Congress. Student loans and education costs, federal policy influence repayment options, affordability, and the cost of colleges and how much they're going to help. We also have housing and healthcare. Policy choices are two of the. We also have housing. Housing was done for Fed policies and what they've done to chose to bail out the homeowners after the 2007 housing crisis. We've created a policy where they have groups that policy bails out at the effect of other groups, which means it is very important to vote going forward. So your vote matters. Practical takeaway: thinking of voting as an extension of your financial plan. Just as you contribute to your retirement check, your retirement account, you contribute your voice at the ballot box, ensuring that your financial priorities are met, because other groups are. The biggest mistake you can make in your 2030 isn't really choosing the wrong stock fund or even $50 a month. It's making the small, consistent changes, education and decisions to help put you in a better position long term for your life. So hopefully that helps. Thank you guys for staying with me and have a great day.